Hey everybody, it's Coach Wharton here with OnlineBikeCoach.com, and in today's OBC Daily Ditty, we're going to take a look at my threshold both physically and physiologically to see if the numbers really do add up. It looks like Xert has got me set up for a threshold of 265 watts. Now, what is the definition of threshold? It's a bit of an ambiguous term, but basically it means this. Below the number, you can go for quite some period of time. Above the number, you're on borrowed time. You're generating more waste than your body can process. Now, if we look at the 265, we're going to study that using my VO2 Master and the Moxy monitor. And what we're going to do with these is we're going to study the values below this and then slightly above 265. And what we're going to be looking for are a period of time where I stabilize with my VO2, or my VO2 starts to ramp up until I reach an exhaustion. And at the same time, we're going to be looking at the Moxy on my left quad, so that if we see it plateau, we'll know that I'm in homeostasis. But if we see it start to decline, we know that once again, I'm on borrowed time. We're going to use the Perf Pro 2020 for this. We've got my standard 22-minute warm-up, and then we've got 5-minute blocks at 85%, 95%, 100%, and even 105% if I get that far. Now, the recoveries are set at 90 seconds each. Why 90 seconds? Well, that usually gives my Moxy an opportunity to help me show super saturation of my maximum saturated muscle oxygen. And I like to have that value. Anyway, let's get on the bike and see what happens. Okay, so what I wanted to point out in this warm-up is if you look at the projection for SMO2, which is off to the left here and is circled, the SMO2 is currently reading 34.6% oxygenation. And it's going to decline a little bit as I increase my intensity. But more importantly, I want you to see how low it goes for the 30 seconds of the interval. And then I want you to see how it rises to maximum saturation. Furthermore, if you'll see, it takes right at 90 seconds, maybe a little bit less, to get to that maximum saturation. So we're just going to zoom in on this one and take a look. Here we are. It's telling me to go to Xert orange intensity. The Xert dial is up on the upper left, and I'm at 450-ish watts, something like that. SMO2 takes a dive. It's down to 15%. Now it's down to 13%. I've got 15 seconds left. I'm going to go down into the single digits. All right, 9.7%. It's going to hold 9.5, 9.4, 9.0, and 8.7. All right, so here we are. We've got 4.5 minutes. Watch the countdown timer on the blue box, and let's watch SMO2 as it rises. Okay, so here we are. We're 15 seconds into the recovery. We're at 12%. It's still rising. It's still rising. And we're at 25, 28%. 30 seconds out. Here's 38%. I just go into a slow, steady pedal. Heart rate, again, is coming down. And let's see, we're at 60% right now, 62%, 64%, 65, 66, 67.5. At 1 minute out, we're at 68% saturation. And it's going to plateau here in the next couple of seconds. I don't think it breaks 70 in this one. Yeah, here we are, 70% right there, 1 minute 15. And it's going to start to decline now. And then I'm going to start resuming my intervals. Okay? So that's a 70%. I think in these interval recoveries, you'll see that I reach about a max saturation above 80%. And I also go down to about 7%. We'll talk about why that's important as we get into the intervals themselves. Okay, here we are with about 90 seconds left in the first of the intervals. Now remember, this was at 85% of my functional threshold power. And if you look on the upper right-hand corner of the blue box for Perf Pro, you'll see that it's set to 265 watts. And then the target on the left-hand side upper corner is set to 225 watts. Now my lap power is 224. I was right in there. Everything's fine with that. I apologize for any of the video issues, but what you basically see is SMO2 is in the 22s, VO2 is in the 45s, and when we look at things, what we see is my rolling 5-minute average for that interval was about 226 watts, 225 watts, and then the heart rate ended up being about 167 beats, and my 5-minute average for SMO2 was at 27%. So, you know, things were good. Things were very, very manageable. And the only thing I'll also point out is if you can see how incredibly stochastic the power is on the chart, that is the result of a one-legged power meter. That is what happens when you get half the data that you need. Anyway, let's go to the next interval. Okay, here we are in the second interval, which is right at 95% of critical power. And when we start off, we're going to take a look at the exert value, which is in the green, so we're still below threshold. VO2 in this last minute plus is rising, but the last 3 minutes where everything stabilized showed a 49.9 average, 16.5% on the SMO2, and an average heart rate of about 174 beats. What's also interesting is that the SMO2 plateaued in those last 3 minutes at between 16 and 17%. So that tells me that once again, I was pretty much below my critical power or functional threshold power, depending on how you want to define it. I think honestly, critical power is a better term to use. What else can we tell you about this? You can see that right now I am actually slipping on my VO2. It's trending up. Anything above 80%, of course, is reaching into VO2 max. So here we go with just a few seconds left. 10 more seconds. Lap power and target power are right on target. And you can see there's a 53. SMO2 does not shift all that much. And heart rate spikes at about a 176 or a 177. Once again, we're going to go right back in and take a look at this SMO2 as it pops back up again during my recovery. And you can see that we're reaching 30% already, 20 seconds out from the recovery. We're at 41%, 52, 57, 61.9, 65.1. There's a 69. 71, 72.6, 74, 45 seconds left. We're at 75. Now there's 76. You can see that it's not rising as much. It's just a couple of tenths here and there. With 30 seconds left, we're at 78.7. There's a 79.2. Maybe I'll get to 80. Let's take a look. 20 seconds left, 79.7, 79.8. There's my 80.1 with 15 seconds to go. This is why I do the 90-second recoveries, because I do want to see where that maximum saturation is. Let's move on to the next interval. Okay, here we are at the last 90 seconds of the interval, right at 100% of threshold. And my target is 265, my lap power is 265, and I'm riding sort of, you know, you can see my exert numbers sort of float between yellow and green, and the heart rate is at or just above what I feel is my threshold, which is between a 173 and a 175, so it kind of averaged out there. but most importantly, VO2 max is well into above my 80% number in the 53s and 54s, but the SMO2 is not that far off from the previous interval. It's hovering at above 16%. And it dips at the very, very end there, but it really, really held itself pretty darn well for at least 4.5 or 4 of the 5 minutes for the effort itself. This is kind of exciting because what we know about SMO2 is that, again, it's kind of a passive way to look at deflection points for lactate threshold. And by holding that 16%, honestly, I think that the 265 number is, kind of value. It has value here. What's going to be interesting to see is what happens in the next 5 minutes when I'm well above this. Okay, so here we are. We're at the final interval, and as you can see, I'm a minute 23 left before the interval itself. My VO2 is in the 63 range, so I'm really pushing my VO2 max. And my SMO2 is down in the 15.3 range. Heart rate is in the 180s. And you can see that I just basically canceled it right about there. I never really got that SMO2 down all that low, but there's a very, very fine line between 16% and below. So what I'm going to do with this information is I'm going to see if I can do multiple intervals going forward with SMO2 between like 16 and 20% and see if I can hold that for extended periods of time. And then I'm also going to see if I can do intervals of about 3 minutes or so and get the SMO2 down below 16%. So I think in my case, 16% seems to be sort of the magic number above which, in terms of higher at the SMO2, I can ride for a little more sustained period of time, and below which I'm truly in my VO2 max and I'm on borrowed time. Anyway, we'll take a quick look. You can see my SMO2 is going to go back up again. I gave it that extra minute. I should have tried to, I just couldn't pull it off. I just didn't have the power. I don't have the stamina that I expected to have. And let's see if I can get it up. 77.5, 77.7. Heart rate's down. VO2 max is down. And I think the fact that you see that I don't necessarily get it back up, well, no, it's going. Let's just see if it gets up to 80%. 78.8, holding. 78.9. I don't think it goes back over 80% on this. And what I look at this as is a great opportunity right here to start sucking down your recovery drink and to start rehydrating. It's really, really important when that SMO2 is at its max vasodilation, because that's where you're going to start pushing the nutrients back into the cell system, and it's just wide open. Okay, so in conclusion, was the Xert 265 watt critical power or functional threshold power value accurate? Yeah, I think it actually was. I was able to do 5 minutes right below it. I was able to do 5 minutes right at 265. But as soon as I got above 265 by 5%, I didn't make it more than 3 minutes and 50 seconds. So I do think it worked. Now, what we also validated in many ways was the SMO2 number. And by having SMO2 plateau every single interval at a certain number in those critical last 2 or 3 minutes, we were able to show that my homeostasis was occurring, and I was neither, I wasn't running on borrowed time. The final interval, you could see the VO2 max going in this direction, you could see the HR going in this direction, and SMO2 once again plateaued, but it was really, really, really low. You remember during my warm-ups, I got it down to 6, 7, and 8%. And for the final 4 minutes of the last interval, it was below 16%. So it wasn't very far off in the really big scheme of things. for that liminality. Again, I'm going to do some more intervals to show the SMO2 values, but I'm kind of excited to sort of show that this 265 was a valid threshold, and above that, I was on borrowed time. In this case, 3 minutes and 50 some odd seconds. Anyway, that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe on the YouTube channel or also through my blog. This is how I make my living, and if you have questions, don't forget to ask them below. We do offer a monthly webinar, and we will highlight certain things, and we'll sort of take it from there. Anyway, thanks again. This is Rich Wharton with Online Bike Coach, and enjoy the ride.